is a photo of Elbow Falls I took a couple years ago. So let's get right into it. This is the original raw photo, as you can see here, and this is what I'm going for, the final edit. I'll be going through the steps on how I got to this point. So back to the original. One of the first things I like to do on all my photos, pretty much every photo, is a lens correction. And basically this, I just go to enable profile corrections here. This pulls up the metadata on the lens and basically fixes or corrects for any sort of aberrations in the lens, distortion, chromatic aberration, that kind of stuff. So just a quick little tweak. As you'll see, it doesn't do a whole lot, but it does fix things a little bit of distortion there. Always a good thing to do on most of the photos. Not necessary, but a good thing to do. The next thing that I like to do is usually, depends on the photo. I don't have a predetermined set of steps that I like to do in always in the same order. I kind of like to go and do what things I see first and then work on that. So what I'm going to do next on this photo is cropping. I'm going to go into the crop tool here. And for me, cropping is about two things. One, basically eliminating elements that are sort of near the edges of the photo, getting rid of distracting elements near the edges, and also repositioning my center of interest or my focal point of the image. In this case, the focal point, the waterfall, of course, is pretty much where I want it, but I would like to crop out this little bit of stone wall that's up here. So I'm just going to go in and drag this down. So it's just kind of taking out that stone wall, and then maybe just sort of play a little bit with the side to side. I think I might just sort of play with that. I want to keep my the waterfall center of interest here sort of a little off to the side on that third line, little sort of right third center kind of thing, and that looks pretty good to me. So we'll go with that for the crop there. Now, next, one thing I did notice here is that there's quite a bit of dust on my sensor here. As you can see, there's a number of dust spots. I think I noticed one up in the waterfall. Oh, maybe not. Anyways, yeah, I'm going to go in and do those just because I find them distracting. I like to sort of clean up the photo and do that first, and then those are all out of the way. So I'm just going to go in and do those. I'm going to use the spot removal tool in Lightroom again for this type of thing. This works really good. I can basically just click on there. The other thing I like to do too is do something Lightroom has called visualize spots. It's just down here. You can click that on, and it kind of goes through and gives you a good indication, pretty clear indication of where your dust spots are. And essentially, I'm just clicking, and then if I don't like where Lightroom chose it, I can reposition. Or, of course, if those familiar with Lightroom, you can click and drag. And sometimes I like doing that as well, just clicking and dragging. Then that way I don't have to redo it like so. So I'm just going through, clicking and dragging, and removing the dust spots. And we'll speed up on that. So the next thing we're going to do then is the black and white conversion. And for me, this shot, when I took it, I definitely envisioned it as a black and white photo. This is what I saw in my head when I was taking the photo, and where I wanted to go with the editing as a final shot for this. So black and white for me is all about a lot of times it's about contrast. And in this shot, what really drew me to it as a black and white photo was contrast in tonality, so the darker rocks and the brighter waterfall. And also for me was the textures of the rock contrasting with the texture of the water, the real sort of gritty texture of the rock versus the smooth, silky effect of the water using a long exposure, of course. So I want to really, in the direction I want to take this editing, those are the things I want to really bring out in the photo is that contrast in tonality and the contrast in texture. And so, of course, to do that, we're going to play around in Lightroom and do that kind of thing. So there's a few ways to convert to black and white in Lightroom. I can just hit the black and white button here, and that basically does a straight conversion. It just desaturates the image. That's a good place to start, and we'll go with that. So I usually like to start with the basic panel here. And so there's a number of different things we can do. The overall exposure, of course. I think I'm going to drop the overall exposure just a little bit again to darken those rocks up. And what I can do then is when I come down into highlights, I can start to change my tonality. I can start to bring some contrast in. I'm not a huge fan of the contrast slider in Lightroom. I tend to shy away from that. I like to break it up and do it with the highlight, shadows, whites, and black sliders personally. My shadow slider, again, I can sort of decrease or increase the tonality of those rocks. We're going to do a little bit more of that later. Whites, there we go, starts to bring some whites into the image. And then, of course, the blacks. That'll really start to bring down the rocks a bit, that kind of thing. So overall, we're getting pretty good already. I'm starting to really quite like the difference in tones here between the darks and the lights. Again, we'll tweak that a bit more. The other thing you can do is go into the black and white mix and play with the color sliders, which again, in a color raw image, you can change tonalities based on the underlying colors in the image. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll hit the letter Y on my keyboard and do a split screen, and then I can see the original colors. And so there's some red in the rocks here, some reds and oranges probably. Yeah, there are the oranges is starting to play with the tonality. So I can bring that up and down a bit. And then, of course, the blue of the water. And that'll really change the tonality of the water. So I can sort of bring that up as well too. Arguably, you can go either way on this. The blues are essentially, you can adjust the tonality in the blues, or you can adjust them in the highlights and whites as well too. In a color image, in a very vibrant color image, you can really play with those colors. But I like to just sort of tweak the tonalities here a little bit in there. All right, then back up to the basic, and now I'm gonna sort of leave texture and clarity. We will be definitely doing these, but I'm going to do them in a different section. I'm just going to add a little bit of texture and a little bit of clarity just to start to get, those are going to give me my contrasts in texture between the water and the rocks. But I don't want to go too far with it, and I'll talk about that why in just a sec. Oh, now we're going to get into some more of the specific editing. So basically what we're doing up to this point was global editing, overall editing of the photo. To really start to bring out the different things I want in this photo, we're going to get into what we call local editing. And that's using the brush, the radial, and the gradient tools. So I'm going to start with the brush. That'll be most of what I'm doing. So in the brush tool in Lightroom, basically this allows you to paint on in specific areas, adjustments that you want to do. And so the key here is that things like texture and clarity, which I really want to again emphasize that difference in texture and tone. I want to brush those edits into specific areas in the photo and only do it on the rock but not the water, or some things in the water and not on the rock, vice versa. So I'll show you what I mean here. So I want to start with, let's say, clarity. I'm going to bump up the clarity and the texture, and I'm going to, I've got my brush flow here and everything. I can set my brush size, and so what I want to do is sort of brush in that clarity and texture into the rock. And you can see how it really starts to sort of bring out that texture in the rock. That's what I'm looking for. And the clarity is going to sort of bring up a bit of contrast as well too. I can hit the letter O. That's going to show me my mask of where I'm painting and where I'm not. So I'm just going to go through all the rock stuff and bring up that clarity and texture. That's what I want to do, and not in the water. So as you can see there, that's brought that up, and I can toggle that off and on, and it made quite a difference actually. Quite nice. Then next, and of course what I can do, I'll come back to that sec, I can sort of really increase that or decrease it once it's painted in. So I think I'm going to bring up that texture, and the clarity should really make a big difference there. Yeah, there we go. Now I can also, now that I've got the rock painted in, I can also drop, if I want to drop the exposure, play with the exposure bit on just the rock, I can do that as well. Bring that up just a touch. The other one that I've found is very interesting lately as well too in Lightroom is the dehaze. And dehaze can do some interesting stuff. I might do a little bit of dehaze and then bring the shadows up a bit. And I can even bring the blacks down. There we go. So that's starting to really get some interesting texture going and some interesting contrast in the rock. I'm going to hit New. And now I'm going to do same thing, but the opposite with the water. So I'm going to drop the clarity and drop the texture in the water. And again, just do some, nothing major in the water. It's already pretty much the way I like it, but I might just soften things up a little bit in the water as well too. So just sort of bring that around like so. So again, you know, really dropping in clarity makes it super smooth. So I'm going to drop that down. Texture, actually I'm going to bring up the texture a bit to sort of give it some contrast in those lines there, but I'm going to drop the clarity a bit, that kind of thing. So quite like that, and so far so good. Another area I want to adjust a little bit as well too is these trees up here. So I'm going to do another new mask. And I'm going to basically do similar to what I did with the rock. So increase the clarity, increase the texture. And I'm just going to go in to these trees up here and sort of give them a little bit more oomph, a little bit more clarity, a little bit more texture, a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to up the clarity, going to reduce the exposure because I don't want them to take away from the waterfall, but I still want to give them some contrast. And I'm going to drop the blacks a bit. There we go. Maybe a little too much. The shadows, just to adjust that. There. So that's looking pretty good. Now, the next thing I'm going to start doing is I want to start adding some tonal adjustments as well too. So I find this snow up here a bit bright. So for that, I'm going to actually go into the radial tool. And I'm going to bring out a radial adjustment here. And again, I'm making the shape first, and then I'm going to make my adjustments second. I'm going to drop the texture and clarity, and I'm going to bring down the highlights. So I'm going to bring down the exposure of that snow just a little bit. Something like that. And these adjustments, these little basically tonal adjustments are sort of evening out and giving me different spots, different, what I like to call with the radial filter, sort of pools of light. I can adjust and bring out and drop down different areas of the photo. These rocks right here, I'm actually going to bring those down a bit. Again, drop the clarity and texture, and bring down the exposure just a little bit, like so. There we go. And I'm going to do another new one here, and I'm going to do this this first time here. Set that up. This area here. Going to drop the highlights on that to bring a bit more, just a little bit of texture back into the snow. Just a teeny bit of exposure drop there. So now I'm starting to bring texture back into these areas, and essentially what I'm doing is dropping the exposure on them a bit so that they're not going to take away from the main waterfall, which is what I want to get to next here. And so with the main waterfall, now I'm going to start adding, like I said, these little pools of light and highlights in the water, just to bring a little bit of contrast, tonal adjustment. See, I can bring that up a little bit there. Again, nothing major, but that's going to draw the viewer's eye to those areas where I want, which is in the waterfall. And just some small tweaks to the highlights in the waterfall just to increase those up a little bit. And these are all, just basically done to taste. However you want to do these, I like adding these little bits and pieces just to, again, add a little tonal interest, contrast interest to the photo. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this so far. I've definitely increased the contrast and the tonal contrast in the image as well too, the texture contrast and the tonal contrast. Pretty happy with it, looking good. Another thing I like to do on pretty much most of my photos is add a vignette. This is something I did a lot with traditional printing, printing on paper. A vignette is a very subtle way to draw in the viewer's attention to the center of the photo and to sort of very subtly and almost ethereally give a type of frame to the image. You don't want to do a lot, you don't want to go too crazy with it, but just a subtle vignette I find just gives it a nice little frame, a nice little almost a border for to keep the eye from moving outside the frame and keep the eye in the frame. So add a little bit of a vignette. Might pop back to my basic panel, and just now that I've done my overall or my local tonal adjustments, I might tweak things just a little bit, maybe bring shadows up a touch, highlights, sort of just play overall with the image. I'm liking the texture there, the snow's good, the waterfall's good. And so now it comes down to a couple fine-tuning things. So looking pretty good. I am overall pretty happy with everything here. As I said before, tone looks good, contrast looks good. I made a couple other little tweaks just to the water, that kind of thing. So really just to finish it off, usually the last thing we do is detail. And of course in Lightroom, detail is sharpening and noise reduction. Really noise reduction, shouldn't need to do too much of that. I shot it at 100 ISO and everything looks pretty clean, not really any noise. I might do just a teeny bit of noise reduction just to bump that up. But the main thing I want to do is sharpening. And sharpening, I'm going to increase the sharpening, and that's on any raw photo, of course, you need to increase the sharpening. Something probably, I usually like to go somewhere in there. That looks pretty good. But then what I do like to do is if you hold the Option key down and hit masking, you will get this mask here. And essentially what's happening is the white areas are being sharpened and the black areas are not. And so again, with the water being all smooth and silky like that, I don't want a lot of sharpening in the water, or it's going to add some sort of artifacts and texture that comes from the sharpening that I don't want in the water. So what I want to do is mask that sharpening off of the water. So take it off wherever is black, which is what I want to do, and have it applied wherever is white. Which is all on the rocks and everything. So I've set my sharpening, but essentially now what I've done is removed it off the water by adding that mask in. And that pretty much should do it.